Hello, welcome back. This is another episode as we learn about different design skills. There is a previous episode that walks you through this. It's not one of those live sketch notes where you see it happening, but I do talk about different areas. So I wanted to follow up with another episode where I do a little bit of visual thinking in real time, just so you can see sort of how it might happen. And I guess I'll cover some of the key concepts, but also just sort of see what comes to mind. I think in a few of the previous episodes, I forgot to cite three very important people who have good resources online. You can Google them. I think his is Verbal to Visual. He has a sketch notebook, and then she has a lot of Google Slides resources. Okay, so let's slide this over. Again, there's a whole video talking about all the different concepts. So we have the sheet of paper, and the goal here is to capture your thoughts when you're watching something, like watching this video or in a meeting. So let me just start off, try to do as much drawing, writing while I talk. So it's always good to put the date. That way you can look back. And then the topic. So let's see, visual thinking. And then I'll put real time. All right, good to put your name just in case you lose it. And I like to add a little bit of border. And again, there's no hard and fast rules. This is something for me that has worked well. Sometimes I like to, especially if I'm listening to a presentation, I like to create a little bit of a section here. And then usually this is sort of either it could be like to do, and action items, okay, or it could be like key points. So for some people, you might benefit from having this structure right up front. For me, it's very organic and emergent, so I'm doing this for illustrative and teaching purposes here. All right, so let's just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the key things for visual thinking. For a lot of people, they're not comfortable drawing, and I talk about that in the episode where I have the explain everything colored drawing. So I don't want to just reiterate those things, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to have a combination of both words and pictures. You know, in pictures, maybe you call it doodles, sketches, okay, whatever it is. And sorry, now I'm getting distracted, but I need to make sure I have a fourth guy here. Dan Rome, how could I forget? He did back of the napkin and visual grammar. Anyway, sorry, I digress, but it's important. Okay, so we go back sort of the main idea, and as you'll see in previous episodes, you have ways of sort of marketing or setting aside different concepts. You're going to have arrows. So, you know, what's our ultimate goal here? We're looking for comfort and confidence, and also being fluent. And what does it mean to be fluent? You want to be fast and understandable. Now, some people, I am not one of those, have really, really good handwriting, and it could be because they take their time. It also could be because they're just really well practiced. And it's okay if you're not like that. If you want to strive to be like that, that's great. But we're looking for comprehension. Remember, we talked about Pictionary before. Okay, so that's our goal. Our goal is to be able to externalize your thoughts. So, you know, you have this person and they have some thoughts. I'll have your typical light bulb. Okay, and they want to get it out into the real world on this sheet of paper or sheets of paper. So you have the drawing, right, whatever it is. And so it's a way to have a conversation, all right, first with yourself, because this is sort of, you know, you're not doing a transcription or trying to get every thought down. You're just having this way to externalize whatever you're getting from this conversation or presentation. But then as you're developing ideas, this can be a way to communicate to others. And then often, to sort of go meta here, we have our sketch note, all right, sort of a inception here of this note right here. This can then be developed into something else, whatever that is, into a new idea. And for myself, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I'm often hesitant to spend the time doing this because it feels like I don't know where it's going. But afterwards, I'm always happy in doing so. All right, what else can we do to sort of motivate you here? Okay, practice, all right? I said before, this is worth saying again, you should always honor whatever style that your teacher, especially if it's an art teacher, is teaching you, and you learn those styles and then you make it your own. The style that I like to do is part in this industrial design setting, and also just sort of basic shapes. All right, anybody can draw those, and we'll have separate episodes where we look at first we look at arcs, and this is a really miniature version. I would normally not have the students draw this small. Again, we'll have other episodes. Let's see if I can do this without ruining my sketch note. Really, you're looking for this motion, yeah? Right, you got arcs, and then you can go to parallel lines, right? And here, if we were to zoom in on here, we don't want this sort of like shaking hand, and we don't want the sort of hash marks. Again, if that is comfortable for you and you get the job done and it can be fast and understandable, that's all that matters. But this sort of sequence of learning this sort of calisthenics of drawing, this is what we do. So we do arcs, which is sort of the natural motion, and then we do straight lines. Again, I don't want to ruin the readability here, but just to give you a preview, all right? And so you can practice doing these straight lines without a ruler. Again, the idea here is, let's say, key points. You have a small window of opportunity. It's kind of like that elevator pitch, right? You get in the elevator suddenly with a very rich person who is willing to give you money. Do you have 30 seconds to speak it? And so likewise, if you have this napkin and you want to sketch out ideas, you can't pull out a ruler. And nobody's really going to care if your lines are perfectly straight. Anyways, we go from arcs to lines, then we do the ellipses. And to remind you, if you take a cylinder, all right, so you have a can. If you view it straight on here, that's a circle. If you view it straight on here, then it's a line. And everything from line to circle, okay, that goes from like circle and then to ellipse all the way to line. All right, that's a sort of progression. Anyways, we do ellipses, and then lastly, we do circles. And the idea here is that you sort of go around in this repeating motion. I mean, eventually it's nice if you can just sort of go around once and get that circle. But as you're learning, you're really sort of getting that path. I kind of liken it to like a plane circling a path many times. All right, and this sort of industrial design style, you would then go into this sort of perspective with a horizon line and two vanishing points. And, you know, again, it's a whole art form that we don't necessarily get into, but that's sort of where the basis is here. The other people that I mentioned, for instance, Dan Rome, he talks about visual grammar. He really just takes these basic shapes and says, how can you make simple everyday objects? Again, this Pictionary level, if you want to look up good examples to sort of copy, so you have sort of the pictograms or iconography, anything international, you have to communicate things regardless of the language. Google has auto draw, which is like autocorrect, but for drawing. You kind of just have to see this artificial intelligence in action. You also have a noun project, right? Artists have donated their work, or they get some cut of it of these icons. So that's the sort of good place to practice this sort of thing. Also, it's good to leave a lot of white space, all right? Blank space, whatever you want to call it, all right? So that way, afterwards, you can fill in as needed. And this could be later on with others, okay? And then at some point, kind of like what we talked about here, all right, you could turn the page and do another version of that. Okay, we're approaching the 10-minute mark. I try to make these things digestible. take a look at a couple of the other videos, but I did want to show a live version of this. My goal, especially for students, is to practice this, and then you can practice this on presentations. Okay, so we got the TED Talk. We have like lectures in class, videos, okay, for planning things, meetings. Right, and again, as adults, you might be scared of doing this sort of thing. Just make it for yourself first. You share it with others. If they don't get it, that's okay. This is all good experience to have. That way, that when we are placed in a situation where words may not suffice or you need to draw a diagram, you feel confident. And again, don't worry about not being perfect. Some people are gifted with really, really nice ability to draw and visualize, but the key thing is understandable. And so even here, I'm sort of doing this off the cuff. If I wanted to make it a little neater, I'd plan it a little more, but then, I don't want to make it too refined. I don't want you, the audience member, to be like, oh, I got to plan this out of the way. Rather, I'm just taking this opportunity to record something that somebody else can watch later, and then hopefully you can find your own way. So again, take a look at the previous video. I have a video that describes this, had a video that sort of talks more about drawing philosophy, that's in color, and then these 4 people. Take a look. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.